While it may have been almost a decade since Hurricane Irene cut a swath of destruction through the region, there are still some river habitats here in western New England that haven't fully recovered from its effects. Connecting Point's Brian Sullivan traveled to the Franklin County town of Colrain to visit one of these locations as it undergoes a unique river restoration.
For the generation of today's adults who grew up as kids playing with Lincoln logs, this may have a special appeal. The location is a small stretch of the North River in the upper end of the town of Colrain, Massachusetts, just a stone's throw from the Vermont state line. What's happening here is a river restoration project unlike many that have come before it. This project involves the use of some 400 hemlock timbers, some piled vertically 10 feet into the riverbed, and the others stacked horizontally to create square buttresses.
We got trees coming in towards the bank, perpendicular to the river into the bank, with the root balls hanging out towards the stream. And then we've got ones parallel to the bank and kind of stacked, like you said, like Lincoln logs, and building that structure up from the channel bed up towards the top of the bank.
For those unfamiliar with the title fluvial geomorphologist, I'll admit that Miller is only the second person I've come across with that title in all my years of reporting. In short, it's the study of the interactions between the physical shapes of rivers, their water and sediment transport processes, and the landforms that they create. This project is Miller's design, and it's one that the Connecticut River Conservancy is managing. This after waiting several years for the permits and everything else to fall into place.
The Connecticut River Conservancy got some grant money from the Natural Resources Conservation Service. They're part of the Department of Agriculture to do a bunch of different river restoration projects, and this one is the first one we're completing. It took 4 to 5 years to permit the project, and so we're really happy to finally go to construction.
The CRC was also tasked with hiring and coordinating contractors to carry out that construction. Enter Scapes Builders and Excavation, a local general contractor out of South Deerfield, Massachusetts. Their excavation division has done similar projects to this one, in which, after the vertical logs have been pile-driven, the horizontal logs are drilled and cabled together with them, while the space in the middle is eventually filled with gravel to stabilize the bank. Getting the timber in its entirety with the root ball still intact, especially in such mass quantities, isn't always as easy as it was in this case, where they were able to get them locally sourced from a site in the nearby town of Conway, Massachusetts.
These are these large hemlock or maples with these big root wads, and how do you procure them? And that's a challenge. These actually came from a large solar field site. So large solar field, we got the trees, now we're rebuilding the embankment with those trees that, otherwise maybe they'd be pulpwood, but it's kind of a neat way to, reuse that product.
This nearly 600-foot stretch of river is part of the Dornbush property, as are the several thousands of feet of the one-time forested buffer area between the waterway and the farmland that were wiped out during Tropical Storm Irene. But if all goes according to plan, it will eventually come back after the completion of this project. And somewhat surprisingly, there may not be too many outside witnesses to this geological transformation, unless they stop and squint their eyes to see it from this tiny section of Route 112. What I find interesting is that most of the drivers that cross the North River over this bridge, whether on their way to Vermont, which is just about a mile that way, or coming back from there, probably don't even realize that there's such a unique project taking place less than a quarter of a mile up the river from here. And rebuilding the banks is just one of the many layers to this restoration, which may have required several years to permit, but will hopefully enjoy several decades of sustainability.
There's a lot to this project, and there's a lot of goals. One of those goals is to keep the sediment out of Long Island Sound. So we're protecting this farm field, keeping the silts and soil from washing into the river. And we're doing that while we're improving the habitat.